Hello, welcome once again to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Jeff Shepardson at Beachad 50. And I don't know what we call it tonight. We say Kershaw Day, we say Sale Day. Sale's earlier in the day today, so it's not. It was Sale afternoon, I guess. But I'm going to say it's Trout night tonight because
that works.
It's going to be really hard not to play Mike Trout. We'll get to him here in a few minutes, but we'll dedicate this day to him. As we do, we'll start off at starting pitcher where there's a lot of guys you feel good about, nobody you feel great about, no slam dunk pitcher, a couple cheap options as well. So we'll go through all of them right now. Most expensive guy here, James Shields. Not a big fan of his tonight. Really struggling against lefties. 385 WOBA allowed. Big total in Texas. Struggled with the long balls. So really not a guy that I'm targeting. I guess if you want a GBP swerve, you can. But, I mean, he's nowhere near that strikeout rate he had earlier in the season. Really cooled down on that. Just not a guy that I'm playing. But we were talking about that Pittsburgh-St. Louis game. Looks like both sides of that are going to be fine cash game plays. Burnett, Lackey. I think you and I both agree that A.J. Burnett is the guy we prefer. Higher strikeout rate, pitching at home.
Slight favorite.
Yeah, favorite. Low total, of course. So I think that Burnett, especially, and he also has a much higher ground ball rate. So Burnett is the guy if you're going to play one of those two. But really, if you decide to go Lackey, I mean, I wouldn't fault you for it because they're pretty similar pitchers tonight.
Yeah, I mean, right now they look like the top two arms that I like on tonight's slate. They're pitching in a pitcher-friendly ballpark. Low total, as you said. I mean, they have the highest floors of the guys going tonight, and to be honest, it doesn't look particularly close. We talked about Jordan Zimmerman a little bit before the show. Decent upside because the Orioles strike out quite a bit. Zimmerman's been fine this year, but his strikeout rate is depressed, and the Orioles do have power, and it is at Camden Yards, so a little bit more risk attached to him than Burnett and Lackey, but again, not a bad option. The non-Burnett Lackey option that I really like is C.J. Wilson against the Mariners. Again, if we're talking GPPs and you're trying to get some strikeouts, Wilson's going to offer you more than some of the bargain arms that we're going to target and discuss. But I like Wilson against the Mariners. They're not very good against left-handed pitching. And he should get some run support against the homer-prone Hisashi Iwakuma. And then the biggest betting favorite on the night checks in at just $6,900, and that's Ryan Vogelsong, facing the worst offense in baseball against righties. There aren't a ton of bats that you need to spend up on tonight, but I have no problem pivoting all the way down to Vogelsong because you should get a quality start or something close to that and a W. Not going to get a lot of punch-outs, not a big strikeout pitcher, but he is backed by AT&T Park, so he is in a pitcher-friendly venue against the worst offense in baseball against righties. So, relatively safe pick.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like you said, he's been one of those guys that, you know, on paper you don't want to play him, but he's been a solid play for the past couple months. He started off really badly earlier this season, but it's hard to argue with such a big favorite there for sure. I don't want to say it, but we kind of have to say it there.
Yep.
Colby Lewis, $6,200. He hasn't been great, but he's shown his moments. Obviously, he was very good against the White Sox, but who hasn't been? He had a good start against Minnesota. Lots of people do that as well. Was terrible in his last start, but that's going to keep his ownership levels down. This is a situation where it's Colby Lewis, and I'm not saying he's reinvented himself, but one of the worst in the game against left-handed batters over the last few seasons. Turned that around a little bit, got those numbers down this season to a reasonable 335. But he's actually been really good against right-handed batters, which is the reason why he's in play for tonight. 307, WOBA allowed is a solid number. So what's interesting with Colby Lewis tonight is this is a Padres team that even in great situations like they had last night, they just cannot hit the ball. So, I mean, something's got to give here. And, I mean, when it's a cold offense versus an average to slightly above average pitcher, I guess, I'm going to side with the pitcher because you're either seeing the ball well or you're not. And this team, not a single player is locked in right now.
Yeah, and the fact that they have such unexciting left-handed batters to oppose Lewis with, your best hitters in that lineup are their right-handed bats, so Lewis holds the platoon advantage there. He has been tough on right-handed batters for the most part this year, not walking many, striking them out at a nice clip, and as you said, about a 307 WOBA against righties this year. So I do like Lewis. I like him more in GPPs than cash games, obviously, because there's just there is that meltdown potential. But you get him in a GPP, you're spending next to nothing on pitcher. You can basically grab every top hitter that you want at each position, and go ahead and they'll complement Colby Lewis pretty nicely if he gives you 8 to 12 points, and you'll take that all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there. I think he's a fine, cheap GPP option, and you're going to want to get some big bats. We'll get to those here, starting right now, actually, at catcher. Buster Posey against David Buchanan, Yasmani Grandal against Taylor Jungmann. Take your pick with those two guys. I slightly prefer, obviously, the park factors for Grandal, but obviously Posey, the better hitter, longer track record, and actually a slightly better matchup. So whichever guy you can get, I think you and I are the same, thinking that these two guys are head and shoulders above the rest tonight.
Yeah, they are by far my favorite players at the position, and I think that if you're not going to use them, as you and I discussed before the show, you really got to save money. And thankfully, there is one really interesting name out there that you can do just that with, and that's Jesus Montero at 2,400. The now first baseman, former failed top prospect, does one thing really well. He hits left-handed pitching really well. He hit lefties when he was in the bigs before. He's crushing them at the AAA level this year. He's going to be in the platoon, and you expect him to start tonight against lefty C.J. Wilson. So at $2,400, could be a sneaky good play. Going to probably be low owned.
Yeah, definitely. So if I'm not able to pay up for these top two guys we mentioned here, that's where I'll be taking as well. I think he's a great tournament option also. Really nobody in the middle that just stands out that you really want to play. That really above average play, I should say. First base options. Hisashi Iwakuma has been awful this season, giving up a ton of home runs. 4 in his last start, his first since his return from the DL. Albert Pujols for that reason, and whatever other reasons that all of a sudden he's great again. Albert Pujols at 4,300 is a great option. Gotta like Prince Fielder as a lefty against James Shields at $3,500. And then if you want your cheap power, Megacron, CJ Cron over here. His last 4 games, he has 11 hits. 2 of those were doubles. 3 have been home runs. 10 total RBIs. I mean, at this point, I don't know if it's necessarily chasing a hot streak. This guy's just locked in and against a pitcher that's really, really struggling. So if you're going cheap, I think he's an excellent value at 2,700.
Yeah, the only other cheap first baseman I'm looking at is the lone left-handed threat, if you can call him that, in the Padres lineup, and that's Yonder Alonso. Gets a good lineup spot, should probably be hitting second tonight. As you noted, Lewis has been better against lefties this year than he has in recent years, but that's relatively speaking, meaning that he's still not good against lefties. He's just considerably better than he had been. So if you really want to say you want to trot out the all-star outfield of your choice, maybe pivot down to Yonder Alonso at 2,300, and you can do that. But I'm with you. Fielder looked great. I like Adrian Gonzalez against Youngman in Los Angeles. Pujols, I mean, if you could spend the 4,300, Iwakuma, even when he was going right, he had issues with home runs. I mean, that's basically, if you're leaving the splitter up, that is not the pitch to leave up. It's going to get punished. It's kind of like I don't know, the adage with the knuckleball, if it's high, let it fly sort of deal. Yeah. If that splitter's not down there and biting out of the zone, it's really more or less a meatball. But beyond that, I would throw one more name out there, and that's David Ortiz. Big Papi gets Ivan Nova today. Nova has not been particularly great since coming back from the disabled list. Yes, his sub-3 ERA might make you think that he's been good, but he hasn't really struck anyone out. He's got almost as many walks as he has strikeouts. It checks in at 7 walks to 9 strikeouts, so it's almost 1-to-1. And as you noted, he struck out 1 batter in 2 of those 3 starts. It's not good. If you're pitching to contact to a lineup like the Red Sox that can hit right-handed pitching pretty well, that's going to be problematic, and Ortiz is right in the middle of that. So I do like Ortiz some today as well.
Yeah, definitely. We'll throw out Ryan Howard at 2,300 as a tournament option as well. Vogelsong, when he does struggle, it's against left-handed bats, and Howard not a good hitter at this stage in his career, but still has a lot of power. So if anyone can hit one out of that park, you got to put him on that list. Second base options, I don't love a whole lot of them. Cesar Hernandez, another lefty. Well, he's a switch hitter, but will obviously be hitting lefty against Vogelsong. Coming off of 3 straight games against 3 of the best pitchers in the entire world. So maybe Vogelsong, a nice step back for him as a guy who was crushing the ball, really putting the ball in play a ton right before that stretch there. So I like him. Couple other options. I know Joe Panic right there, your boy against David Buchanan, $3,000. Had a big game last night. And then I know there's someone, the guy that you and I always seem to talk about, been bumped down lower in the order, but I know you're a big fan of his tonight either way. So who you got?
Yeah, the $2,800 Rugi Odor. He's been just crushing the ball since he was recalled from AAA. Murdered the ball when he was down on his AAA assignment. We're talking about a 21-year-old second baseman that really his calling card was his bat for the most part. The fact that he could hit and play a competent second base. And the bat's really come alive, and he doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. Reached base a few more times last night, hit a triple. Great ballpark. And if he happens to be bumped back up in the lineup, all the better. But even if he's hitting 8th, and I said this yesterday, and I'll stand by it, he's got a really good top of the order behind him. So when that order wraps around, that's a nice way to maybe, if you are considering stacking Rangers, go bottom order and go wrap around as opposed to just doing your traditional 1 through 4 or something along those lines. So I really like Rougned Odor tonight. Beyond that, I just don't love the position. As you said, Panic looks good. Hernandez, price is a little bit up, but he's going to hold the platoon advantage against Vogelsong. Colton Wong I like. He can put a charge into the ball, and I like that at second base. Burnett's a tough pitcher to take deep, tough pitcher to lift at all with his ground ball rate, and not a great ballpark, but at least Wong leads off things, and in addition to having some gap power and being able to reach the fences, he can steal a base on occasion too. So a little bit of everything from him. And then Jimmy Paredes looks like a GPP play to me tonight. Jordan Zimmerman not missing a lot of bats. Paredes makes a lot of hard contact. So that's a recipe for success. Contact against a hard contact kind of hitter. So Paredes is in GPP play for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll throw out one more guy here. Johnny Giavotella, $2,600. Once again, I'll pick on Hisashi Iwakuma with my 4-year-old son at this point. I mean, anyone who can swing any size bat is in play for me. $2,600, a fair price for leadoff hitter. You're obviously not expecting him to take one deep, but all he really needs to do tonight is get on base and just let the guys behind him take. He could probably walk home once one goes into the seats right behind him. All right, third base options. If you are not playing Jordan Zimmerman, you're obviously a fan of Manny Machado at $4,300. Obviously batting at home, one of the better hitters in the entire league in righty-righty matchups, especially over the past month or so. The guy's just been locked in. Got to consider him. He's expensive. Probably more of a tournament option because of that, but either way, definitely in play. Alex Rodriguez, another one of these guys. You were mentioned before the show, he has had better numbers against righties than lefties this season, but at $3,600, Clay Buchholz was a guy who wasn't allowing any hard contact or long balls. He sent one into the, I don't know if there's a street behind Yankee Stadium, or out behind Fenway, but he sent one out of the ballpark basically last night. So got a ton of power. A-Rod's definitely a guy you're considering as well.
Yeah, looking at the cheaper options, Matt Carpenter holds a platoon advantage against Burnett. $3,000, not a bad price tag for a guy who's just a line drive hitting machine. Brock Holt doesn't look terrible if he continues to hit second. I think the Red Sox are going to hang some runs Nova, so grabbing some guys at the top of that order looks pretty good. And then Pablo Sandoval, $2,300. If you're looking to load up that outfield, there are a couple names that we're going to be getting to here pretty shortly that do have expensive price tags. You decide that you're going to skimp some money at third base, and a near minimum salary Pablo Sandoval looks like a decent option to me.
Yeah, he is, and he, for those reasons you mentioned, you're going to want to get some big bats, and I think that's your best bet for value at third base. Shortstop options. You get Xander Bogaerts against Ivan Nova at $3,000. He's just been that guy. We keep talking about him. He's just been very consistent, hitting singles, doubles. Doesn't have a lot of power, but hasn't needed it recently. Having a nice lineup spot as well. He's your alternative to Johnny Peralta, who does get that tough righty-righty matchup with A.J. Burnett. Outside of that, there's a couple other okay options. Who outside of those two, if you got to pick one, you can't have one of those two. Who are you going with?
Probably going to go with $2,800 Brandon Crawford. He's exhibited a reverse platoon split the last few seasons, but David Buchanan is not a big league caliber pitcher. That's putting it mildly. I'm going to take my hacks with my Giants against Buchanan. I would take hacks against David Buchanan with the Little Giants, I think, at this point. So I'm going to go with Brandon Crawford at 2,800.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. Really no cheap options that you feel good about, as usual, at shortstop. I suppose if you need to go really cheap, Chris Taylor led off last night. He didn't do anything, but he led off against lefty. $2,300, you consider that, but still just not something that you feel good about. I think going with one of the three guys we mentioned is probably a solid way to go. You're not paying a lot for starting pitching, so it's not tough to pay a little bit for a shortstop tonight.
Not at all.
All right, now the man of the hour, well, the man of the week, I guess. Mike Trout, $5,500. Looking at his last 4 games, I'll just break this down for you real quick. He has 8 hits in his last 4 games. 5 of those hits have hit, bleachers, a glove in the stands, a beer, a popcorn, something in the outfield outside of the stadium. Throughout that time, he has 9 RBIs, 6 runs scored. He's showing once again that he's the best player in the entire world, all-around player, hitter, doesn't matter. I can't find any way that I fade Mike Trout in any of my games tonight.
No, there's no Kershaw or Sale to pay up for. That means you've got Boku bucks to spend elsewhere, and that money's going to go immediately to Mike Trout. Worry about the rest after getting Trout in your lineup. As I said, if you want to save at some of these other positions, maybe build yourself a crazy good outfield, because I like Bryce Harper tonight against Miguel Gonzalez as well. Left-handed batters are treated to a nice park factor for homers at Camden Yards, so I think pairing the two, this is the kind of day where you can do that sort of thing. There just is not a lot to spend on at pitcher, so I do like Bryce Harper as well. Going to the not atmospheric price tag range, I'm looking at $3,300 Nelson Cruz against a lefty. That's a great price point. Nelson Cruz absolutely annihilates left-handed pitching. At that same price point, we've got Jock Peterson against Tyler Youngman. Youngman, not a particularly good pitcher, really pitching above his skis at this point. We know that Peterson is prone to having those offers because of his strikeout rate, but gotta love the power, gotta like the matchup with Youngman. And then looking a little bit cheaper, we've got, if he gets on base, I feel pretty good about Delino DeShield's chances of stealing. Derek Norris, as I noted yesterday on the podcast, does not control the running game well at all. And DeShields just went out there and stole a base again last night. Big total in that game. If DeShields is leading off, I do like him a little bit at $3,000. And then in the bargain basement range, GPP only play, but Mark Trumbo against the lefty. He does have a track record of hitting left-handed pitching very hard. So $2,400, not a bad price point for him.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that he's in a great spot as well, especially as a cheap guy with power. And we saw him last night, took a righty deep in the 9th inning there. So he's a good option. Once again, all the Texas bats, Chris Young, like you said there, he's a fine play. Really, really cheap options. There's no one that you feel great about. I didn't hear you say Gregor Blanco. You did.
I did not.
Okay, but $2,600 if he's in the lineup. He's a fine hitter, not a guy with a ton of upside, but David Buchanan, as we know, absolutely awful. So I think he's a fine, solid cash game play at $2,600 as well.
Yeah, and at that same price point, I still like Shin-Soo Choo as long as he's going to hit second for the Rangers. He's done work against right-handed pitching this year. His overall line is hurt by his struggles with left-handed pitching. His work against righties remains strong, so I do like him. Big total in that game, so grabbing some hitters towards the top of that lineup, a guy who hits in front of Prince Fielder, pretty good spot to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, that's going to wrap things up for us. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Optimizer Colossus and all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.